Hello, my name is Henry Keane. This is News Pulse at UATV. Welcome to the Daily Show. Today in the episode, no security for Russian Crimea bridge anymore. Ukrainian Navy destroys guard boats. Putin is begging for a ceasefire in conversation with Putin and Trump on May 9th, the day of so-called victory in World War II. What Kremlin dictator is really afraid of? No military equipment on Moscow's parade this time. Where are all the tanks and armored vehicles? We have found them. See in the story for yourself. Kremlin's beloved toy, so-called Crimea's bridge. Security has been breached, or better said, demolished. Ukrainian Navy hits Russian boats that were guarding the massive structure. Ukrainian Navy reveals the footage. The Russian Federal Security Service patrol boats, Sobol, and another one, the anti-sabotage boat Grachonok, were destroyed completely. As a result of the strike, Russia suffered significant irreparable losses, and Ukraine reminds that the Crimea bridge is a legitimate military target as it connects the temporarily occupied Crimean peninsula with Russian mainland. Russia uses it as a key logistical artery to supply these troops. Ukraine has already struck the Crimean bridge many times before. The first attack occurred on October 2022. An explosion occurred on the railway section of the bridge, and as a result, two sections of the road simply collapsed, and the railway track were also damaged. The second attack was in July 2023. Back then, the structure was struck by two surface drones, causing one of the bridge spans to collapse completely again. And on June 2025, the Security Service of Ukraine carried out another operation and struck the Crimean bridge for the third time. Ukraine is increasing its drone production and prioritizing deep strikes against the enemy's logistics and headquarters. This was reported by Volodymyr Zelensky following a briefing by Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov, announcing the key priority for the upcoming month.
One of our priorities for the coming months is middle strikes, that is, targeting the enemy at a depth of up to 120 to 150 kilometers. This primarily includes enemy military logistics, depots and command posts, air defense systems, and other components of Russia's offensive activity against Ukraine. This year, we have already contracted 5 times more middle strike capabilities than last year, and we will continue to scale up contracting and production. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on X.
Donald Trump talked to a dictator, Putin, on the phone and found out all of a sudden that Putin is asking Donald Trump to arrange a ceasefire with Zelensky. Here are some obvious key points for this big and beautiful conversation for you. 1. Putin and Trump share essentially the same view of the so-called Kiev regime under Zelensky, which they claim is dragging out the conflict with European instigation and support. Number 2, Putin stated bluntly that it is Kiev that is resorting to outright terrorist tactics, targeting purely civilian sites on Russian territory. Well, as was nicely put by Russian, by the way, blogger Michael Naki, who wrote yesterday, I quote, "Our peaceful strikes on Ukrainian power grids, apartment buildings and gas storage to destroy Ukraine versus their terrorist strikes on our oil refineries that fund our peaceful strikes on Ukrainian power grids, apartment buildings and gas storage." End of quote. And the key topic number 3, Putin reaffirmed that the goals of our so-called special military operation will be achieved regardless. Number 4, Trump spoke positively about the recently announced Easter truce. Number 5, Putin told Trump he was ready to declare another truce, a truce for the sake of Victory Day, this time which Trump supported. And the bottom line, Putin spent the time complaining to Trump about Zelensky and claiming he is winning everything anyway and anyhow. Trump just nodded along. On a practical note, we might see another barbecue truce announced, just like last year. Well, whatever those two great misleaders were thinking, while talking about Ukraine, here is what Ukraine actually said about any truce.
I have instructed our representatives to contact the U.S. President's team to clarify the details of the Russian proposal regarding a short-term ceasefire. Ukraine strives for peace and is conducting the necessary diplomatic work to truly end this war. We will determine exactly what is being proposed, whether it is just a few hours of safety for a parade in Moscow or something more. Our proposal is a long-term ceasefire that guarantees reliable security for our people and a lasting peace. Ukraine is ready to work toward this in any dignified and effective format. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on Telegram.
Victory Day in Moscow. It is less in military review or more in religious rite. A massive display of hardware designed to worship the state's absolute power. Here, Vladimir Putin isn't a candidate. He is a symbol of national faith, no less. But the contrast with the global community has never been sharper. Where the world says, never again, Russia boasts, we can do it again. Where the world sees the smoke of burning refineries and the scars of Bucha, the Kremlin sees a plan on track. This year, however, the heavy tanks are missing from the Red Square. Moscow blames security threats, but for the international community, the empty pavement tells a very different story, the visible decline of a neo-Soviet empire and the leader at its helm.
Without heavy military equipment, most likely without an air show, and without the passage of Suvorov, Nakhimov, and Cadet Corps cadets, this year's parade on Red Square will be the smallest and most modest in its history. Tanks, armored vehicles, missile systems, fighter jets, and helicopters will be displayed only on large screens. As Putin's press secretary Dmitry Peskov stated, the parade will be held in a reduced format, supposedly due to terrorist threats and because the date is not a significant anniversary. Additionally, during parade rehearsals and on the day of the event, Russian authorities are preparing to restrict mobile communications in several districts of Moscow.
On May 5th, 7th, and 9th, all mobile communication will be restricted, and possibly SMS sending as well, including the operation of white lists. The authorities include internet resources in these white lists that will remain accessible during the mobile internet restrictions. It is expected that these restrictions will not only apply to the center of Moscow, but also to areas within the Moscow Ring Road. From a report by the BBC News Russian service.
Currently, Russian propaganda is trying to convince everyone that the absence of military equipment on Red Square has nothing to do with the shortage of armor and aviation on the front lines. However, the numbers tell a different story. Since the start of the full-scale war, the Russian army has lost nearly 12,000 tanks in Ukraine, over 40,000 artillery systems, 1,300 air defense systems, 435 planes, and 350 helicopters. And of course, bringing the remaining equipment from the battlefield to the cobblestones is highly risky. As for personnel losses, they have been record-breaking in recent months, and despite promises of high recruitment bonuses, the command is unable to replenish them.
Russia has suffered 4 times more losses on the front than Ukraine over the past 4 months. Ukrainian forces have eliminated or wounded 30 to 35,000 Russian servicemen each month. They have done this 95% with drones, with a ratio of 1 Ukrainian killed for every 5 Russian deaths. These numbers sound harsh, but they clearly show the shift in the situation on the battlefield compared to last year. Alexander Stubb, president of Finland, in an interview with Clash Report.
By the way, parades and mass gatherings are being canceled in almost all Russian cities. For example, the authorities in St. Petersburg plan to send only 310 invitations to Palace Square instead of the 6,000 initially planned. Attacks on strategic sites in Leningrad, Saratov regions, as well as in Perm, Orenburg, and Tuapse, have not only caused economic losses, but also severely destabilized the situation within the country. The Russian Public Opinion Research Center recorded a record drop in Putin's approval ratings, down to 65%. As noted by the Washington Post, this is the lowest level of support for the Russian dictator since the beginning of the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. The war Putin started has reached the Russian regions, bringing fear, chaos, and declining trust in the authorities.
Gauging genuine public opinion is difficult under an authoritarian regime that exiles, imprisons, or even kills political opponents, and where criticism of the war is illegal. But compared with Putin's historical ratings, as high as 88%, the falling poll numbers signal growing weariness with the war now in its 5th year, and with negotiations to end it largely stalled. From an article in the Washington Post.
Another reason why the parade is being almost canceled is the rapid weakening of Russia's foreign policy positions. Over the past year and a half, Putin has lost 3 key allies, Bashar al-Assad, Nicolas Maduro, and Ali Khamenei, and he has not been able to help any of them. Consequently, fewer guests are willing to come to Moscow. Therefore, the parade this year, no matter what excuses the Kremlin propaganda may come up with, will serve as yet another testament to the weakness of Putin's regime. Reported by Irina Yusupova, UATV News.
Well, that seems to be it for today. My name is Henry Keane. Thank you so very much for your time and effort. We appreciate that a lot. Please also comment, like, and subscribe to the channel. Whatever comes next day, tomorrow, UATV will be there to keep you posted on things in Ukrainian way. Stay safe and tune. Goodbye.